Josh. Let's get started with these math problems. This lesson 8.9 in our book, at least, is on perfect square trinomials. There isn't a lot to this. It's more of like a, hey, do you understand this? And if you do, then you can apply this. So it's almost like a rule that you're allowed to use when it comes to factoring some of these types of problems. So I wanted to do at least one of those and then just do a bunch of other problems that kind of pulls everything together when it comes to these factoring trinomials things. And then that's it. We'll call it a day. This first one here might look familiar, hint, 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 if you were in our class and working on homework. The question was, is it a perfect square trinomial? In order for it to fit that category, you need to have something at the front and back that's a number that is squared. So is this number a number that we could get by squaring something? Yes. Is this number something that we could square and then get that as a result? Yes. And if that's the case, all you need to do is just break it apart like this. We know that it's a 4. We know that it's x. And then in the back, I have a 49, but I have a minus in the middle. So therefore, I'm going to need a minus here, right? Because if I were to FOIL this, I'd get minus, minus, which makes a plus. And what number makes a 49? A 7. And how many of these do I have? Well, to make it shorter and rather than writing 2 of them, you're allowed to just write it out like that and you're done. Okay? So yes, this is a perfect square trinomial. This is what it would factor down to, and you're allowed to just keep on going from there. Could I do the front and back and figure it all out? Yes, but what they want you to see is that there's patterns with some of these, and in this situation, that's what you're allowed to do. All right, so let's move on to some of these other guys over here. All right, let's see here. We got 24d squared, 39d minus 18. Okay, the first thing you should be doing with these problems is exactly what we started all of this stuff a long time ago with, and I say it in class a lot, right? The minute you're moving into second semester or whatever you guys call this by now, the floodgates are open, you know? It's a matter of how do you want to solve these? And I always try to give you guys step-by-step situations and examples so that way you have a pattern you can follow. And then from there, if you want to cut some corners or do your own thing, then great. But at least you have a solid template that will always work. The first thing you should be doing with these problems is you should be looking at it. You are told to factor. Is there anything I can take out of all 3 values? And this is where just get your calculator, start cranking through them. Try 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. You know, I mean, don't go up past like 13. Usually it's not going to be that big of a number, especially when you're first learning these guys. But I noticed that I can pull a 3 out of all 3 of these. Can I pull out a unit of D? No. Okay. And so then I'll just rewrite what's left. What is that? 8d squared plus 13d minus 6. All right. Now I'll look and see if I can take that shortcut. Is this thing a perfect square trinomial? No, because there's no way to make an 8 or a 6 or anything like that. So now I need to factor this guy down even more. I personally would rather do it. Here's my factors, 8 and 1, 2 and 4. What are my factors over here? 2 and 3, 6 and 1. I would personally rather just play the guessing game at this point. My 3 comes down to the next row. And figure out like what numbers go where, okay? I got some comments from people on the last episode or video where they were like, how do you know how to remember how you could factor this front part and back part with the values? But the book, unfortunately, doesn't do a good example of explaining well, what happens when there's numbers in the front and back, and it doesn't give any good examples of how you work with that. So let's just go back to the roots, okay? We know that we have an adding in the middle, or plus, and we know we have minus in the back. How do we get a minus? By multiplying a positive and a negative. And again, I know I'm going kind of quick through some of these rules, but at the same time, you should know that by now. All right, so I know I have a plus minus. I know I need to start plugging in values and kind of figuring out what's going to work. So I'm going to go with 8D and 1D. And then I'll just pick 2 and 3, okay? Remember, my goal is to get to a positive 13. So let's see here. 2 and 3. If I put a 3 here, well, I guess let's just see. If I put in a 3 here and a 2 here, let's see what happens. I get 2 in the middle, and then 8 times, what is that? 8 times 3 is 24. There's no way that's going to combine to make a 13. So that's out. Let me reverse them and see if maybe that works for us. I can put the 3 here and the 2 here. Let's see here. We get 8 times 2, or negative 2, which is negative 16, and then 3. 3 times 1 is 3. Okay, so it looks like I'm in good spots here. It looks like I got the numbers in the right place. It's just that when I add these two, I'm going to end up with a negative 13, and that ain't right. So in order for me to get it to where it's a positive, I just have to switch these two signs. So this becomes minus and plus. So now let me FOIL this guy and see what happens, because it looks like I picked the right combination of numbers to go into this guy. First, I know that's an 8d squared, because that's what I picked. Outside is going to be 8d times 2, which is going to be 16 of those guys, and then I'm going to have a minus 3 of them, and then minus 6. So when I combine these two, I'm all set. So my final answer would be right here. 3, and then 8d minus 3, and then d plus 2, or 1d plus 2. I personally, as I'm teaching this and as I'm learning this or learning it with new students, I always say, you know what, if it helps you to write a 1 there, then do it. Because, you know, when you FOIL, there's a number there, and it just kind of makes things look a little nice and neat. But you don't have to. It's really up to you. If you want to skip that step, that's totally fine. All right. Let's just keep on going. It's kind of nice because you guys now know all this stuff, and I don't have to teach as many topics. I'm just showing you new tips and tricks and rules with all of this stuff that'll finish out the school year. Let's see here. I got 16a squared minus 121b squared. Ooh, that's kind of ugly. Okay, let's look at this guy. It's not a trinomial. My first step would be, aside from looking at this guy and saying, is it a trinomial or not, to get my two binomials, is there anything I can pull out equally out of both? I got numbers, but I can't pull something out equally, like a 2 or an 8 or anything really. And then I got a squareds and b squareds, and those don't match either. So really all I can do at this point is just try and see if this guy is one of those perfect squares, if everything is squared, and see if I can make something of it like that. So, is there a number that can make a 16 when multiplied by itself? Yes. A, right, I can do that one too. B, I can do that. And what makes a 121? Well, I don't know. I guess we'll find out. Now, this one is a little bit different because the front and back are squared, but this kind of takes us back to a couple lessons ago, where if you have something that's squared in the front, something that's squared in the back, and a minus in the middle, this is one of those situations where you will have two binomials, but because you have a plus and a minus, the middle part drops out. And so, again, I know students are probably thinking, like, how do you just know that that's the case? Like, how does this all work? And it really comes down to experience, practicing these, and looking for what can be done, okay? So I have, let's see here, 4a, because 4 times 4 is going to give us 16, and then I have 11b. Okay, and at that point, I am done. That works, right? Because if I were to FOIL it, I'd get a 16. I would get a negative, some big number. I'd get a positive of the same amount. So those would become a 0. And then I would get my negative 121b squared in the back. And so that's why this works. Now, some people might be saying, yeah, but Josh, remember we just did those perfect square things? Can't I just do like 4a minus 11b squared? Right? Because then I took everything in there and I just kind of like square rooted all of them and then put a minus sign in the middle. Can't I do that? Well, it looks right, But this is where I always say, go back and FOIL it and see if it actually works. Let's say I gave you this as like a warm-up problem. You would look at it and say, oh, that number up here tells me how many of these there are. 4a minus b, 11b. And so now let me try to like FOIL this and see what happens. Yep, the front works, that's awesome. But now I'm going to have a problem because I have 4a times negative 11b, which gives me some big number. And then I have a negative 11b times a 4a, which gives me another big number, but they're both negatives. So they're not going to be a plus minus where it disappears. They're going to get combined and give me a minus, I don't know, some even bigger number, right? And then I'm going to get negative 11b times negative 11b, and I'm going to get positive 121b squared, which is not the same as negative. So I did want to just take a second and make sure you're understanding like why I'm taking shortcuts and how I'm doing it and stuff as I go through these problems, okay? So if this was a question of yours, that's awesome because it shows you're really thinking these things through. Even if I talk through it right now and now you see like why it can't be this, that's awesome as well. All right, let's move on to the next one here. While I'm erasing this, I guess I got time for a joke. This one came in from a student that I had a while back. They said, did you hear about the yacht builder that had to work from home because of this whole coronavirus thing? And I said, no. And they said, yeah, his sales, they went through the roof. Okay, moving right along. Hopefully you like that one. Get it through the roof? No? Okay, whatever. Minus 88c plus 242. I'll just keep on going. Looking at this guy, again, I'm going to ask myself, is there any number I can pull out of all of this stuff, right? And I can definitely pull out 2. Can I pull out a 4? I don't think that guy's divisible by 4, but let me just double check. 242 divided by 4, 60.5. Let me try 8, because these all have 8s in them. Divided by 8, 30.25. No. So, again, use your calculator. Try and divide all of them. On this guy, all I can do is pull that out. So then I end up with a 4c squared minus, what's that, 44c, and then plus 121. All right. Now, this is where I get to talk again about math facts. The better you are with math facts, the better you are at seeing that some numbers, when squared, give you a new value that might show up. That is so helpful in Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 because it comes up all the time. If you can learn up to your 13s, that is amazing because usually at 169, that's kind of like the highest number you would do at 13 times 13. After that, most problems that I've seen, you just use a calculator and work through it in that fashion, okay? 15s come up every once in a while, but not really 14s. And then once you're bigger than that, just use a calculator, okay? But this guy looks like this guy, right? We got the same numbers in here. And so now before I start to factor this guy and figure out, I got numbers in the front and back and everything, take a look at it and see, is this a perfect square trinomial? And I think it is, because I got this number is 2 squared, c is, and then this number back here is squared as well. So because of that, I can just take the shortcut. I'm going to move my 2 down, right, because it is a factor. And then I'm just going to write it as 2c minus 11. Remember, it has to be a minus because a minus minus makes a plus when I multiply. And then it's just squared. If you want to write 2 of them out, you can. But like this would be the most efficient way of writing the answer for that guy. So once again, people might be saying, dude, how did you just know that this was a perfect square trinomial? In part because that's the lesson that we're focusing on for this homework assignment, but also just because as you get better at these, people will start to say, well, okay, if you can do the basic factoring, then here's some shortcuts or different ways you can do it. It still keeps the rules the same, but it does eliminate a little bit of your guessing and like what's actually going to happen, okay? Because you already understand the rules, and so now you're allowed to cut a couple corners. All right, let's do the next one here. And again, I know I'm going pretty fast. This is online learning, which is super crazy. And if you're getting most of it, that's fantastic. If you're getting all of it, that's amazing. If you're even just getting some of this, okay, there will be a time when you can go back and relearn this. So absorb as much as you can. Try the problems with me. Always feel free to pause the video and do these and then see how I do them and see if you're getting it, because you'll get a lot out just by doing that. All right, 12P. First thing I'm going to do, right, I'm just being told to factor these guys. What can I pull out? And I instantly know, okay, I can pull out a 3 and I can pull out a unit of P. What's left? What is that? 4P squared minus 1. Okay. Now, this is where on one of the other homework assignments, we had stuff like this, right? These are those little guys where is everything squared? And with the 1, it's a little bit misleading because you think, well, no. But at the same time, you could say, well, yeah, right? Because 1 squared is still 1. I have a squared, 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 and I have a minus in the middle. So if it came down to it, could I bust this guy apart? Yes. Let me write it out here. What would go up here? I would have a 2P plus 1 and a 2P over here minus 1. And then I'd have my 3P right there. Okay? So that would be the answer for this guy. Now again, I know students will be like, how did you just know that this is like that, right? But 2 homeworks ago was when we were practicing these. And when you have these little equations here, sometimes it's possible for you to make it a plus minus. Right? A long, long time ago, I would give you problems like this and have you factor them or multiply them and FOIL method it and then come up with an answer and go, oh, that's right. Because it's a plus minus, the middle drops out, and that's how I know. But now we're doing factoring, and so it is a little bit crazy, right? There's a lot going on here. So that's where I always say, like, if you notice, if you get this far, that's great. If you can do this next step, that would be the perfect solution for the problem. So good job if you did get it. All right, let's wrap it up with this last problem and send you on your way. Okay, let's see here. I got 3k to the third, 24k squared plus 48k. First thing I'm doing, is there anything I can pull out equally out of all of these guys? And the answer is yes. I can definitely pull out a unit of k. And again, I know I'm going fast, okay? If you want to pause the video and try it on your own, do it. If you want to pause the video as I do these, that's okay too. It's a lot different when it's online. I can only, kind of slow down so much, but I want to make sure you're getting something out of this, okay? So, is there a number I can pull out of all 3 of these? Yes, I can pull out a 3. And if you weren't sure or you don't know what 48 divided by 3 is, go grab your calculator and come up with an answer. This would be k squared, 8k, and then plus, what is 48 divided by 3? I don't know, let's see. 48 divided by 3 is 16. And let's see, I think I'm out. Okay. This one, let's see, is it one of those perfect square ones where I can just do like k plus 4, right? Or something like that? Maybe. I don't know. Let's see. I got this and this. Now, this is where like you could take a shortcut, okay? And you could notice, oh yeah, this is squared and this is squared. It's a minus in the middle, plus in the back, which means that it is going to be one of those perfect square situations. But maybe not. Let's say you didn't know, okay? Factors of 16 are 16 and 1, 4 and 4. And I know that a 4 and 4 is going to make an 8. So if I just wanted to factor it old school, I could. I know I have a k in the front. I know, are these both minuses or pluses? Well, let's look. We have a minus in the middle, plus in the back. So I know it's a minus minus because I need the negative negatives to make a positive. But when I FOIL them and I get the outside inside, they're going to add up to be a negative amount. And I'm going to go with 4 and 4 because that's going to make an 8 in the middle. So let me move this guy down. That would be my final answer. In theory, Josh, you might be saying, could I write this out as 3k and then k minus 4 squared? Yes. So It's okay. If you notice that this was one of those perfect square trinomials, you could just write it like this. If you weren't sure and you wanted to actually come up with the values or the table and do it, you would get the same answer. So I just wanted to talk about that for a quick second, because that way you see how even if you didn't notice that it's perfect square trinomials, which like you already have so much going on in your head, maybe you didn't see it. Maybe you just factor it old school way, get your factors over here, plug them in, see which ones work, and go, oh yeah, -4 will give me a -8, and you're on your way. So that's why as a teacher, I would accept this as an answer. I would also accept this as an answer. And if you left it as this, I would say, okay, and then just remember, it could be written like this as well, okay? And that would be one of those talking points we would have in class. So hopefully this answered some of your questions. These ones should look familiar based on an assignment that I gave, hint, hint, hint. So thanks for those of you that are watching the videos and following along with all this stuff. Tune in next time. We're just gonna keep on